So bosses, there's this idea out there, like if you watch the Veronica videos or you can find on YouTube all the time about how terrible bosses are. And bosses are jerks and they control us and they want to make our lives miserable. And I think there is this idea that the world would be a lot better or work would be a lot better if there were no bosses. So do you think bosses have value? Do organizations need leadership, or are workers going to come in and do what they're supposed to without having somebody sitting there to sort of ensure that the cogs are all working?
But you know what? Interestingly, while you were speaking, I found myself creating a mental image of what bosses are.
Mm-hmm.
And then you came and you mentioned leaders.
Mm-hmm.
So in my head, I'm thinking bosses are those people who come and just, like the term said, boss you around.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like they don't necessarily listen to you or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
In their head, they know what they want done or they want to see done. And then their job is to just make sure that it's happening by any means. That's what's in my head when you talk about bosses and the way you say it. Now, when you talk about leaders, I view it differently. I think about it differently. I see the leader as somebody who's more a team player, you know, who's going to work with other people so that they can reach a common goal. So you're speaking, and in my head, that's what I'm already thinking. I'm already making some kind of distinction.
Yeah.
So when you say bosses, I'm thinking, well, we need more leaders than bosses. And I think that way because of already what the distinction that I've made.
Right.
Yes.
So there's a difference between a leader and a boss.
Well, for me, that's,
Organizations do need leaders. There are things that need to get done and coordination. It's beneficial to have somebody at the top to kind of bring people together and have that discussion. But the boss is going to be the micromanager, the one that's telling you exactly what to do and how to do and when to do it. And they're going to be sitting over your shoulder while you're doing it, criticizing you the whole time. That's the boss. But the leader trusts you. The leader is going to say, okay, this is what needs to get done. I want you to go out and do it. And then they're going to let you handle it. And as long as it gets done, you're never going to hear from them. Or, I mean, hopefully you'll get the praise, but they're not going to sit there and like judge every little aspect of you accomplishing that task.
right. That's what I think. I don't think the boss mentality is the ideal, unless, of course, you're working with, well, people that you see as robots. You know, because I mean, everybody has something to contribute. Everybody has feelings.
Yep.
You know, you may get yourself in situations where an explanation needs to be heard, so, you know, that kind of thing. And then if you're just going to be dishing out commands and you just have those expectations where people just operate like robots and just get that done, you know, I don't think this is the type of leadership, you know, that people welcome.
Yep.
You know, especially people who know and believe in having a voice, collaboration, empathy, you know, all of those.
Yep.
Yes, I don't think the boss mentality would do well in an environment like that at all.
Absolutely. I find that it's pervasive. So you find a lot of bosses out there. It's not as easy to find a leader. But then in all of the literature and in the culture and in best practices, the leadership mentality and the leadership approach is what's seen as what we should be doing. So I guess what I wonder is if we understand that leaders are more effective than bosses, why do we have so many more bosses than leaders?
I think for one, there are some people who believe that um, being a boss, it kinds of like stamps their authority. Some people like to feel that they're in charge. They like to feel that they're powerful. They like to feel that they are the ones giving the commands and dictating and so on. I guess there's some kind of satisfaction that they get from it, right? And it doesn't really matter to them how the rest of the team feels. Well, they don't really see themselves as team players per se. They see themselves as being, up there.
Yeah.
And then you have the peasants down there working and doing whatever to get the results that they want.
Yeah.
Right? So for some people that's a real thing, and they're going to continue that way. This is how they're going to operate wherever it is that they are, because they need to be feeling that. So much so that you find these same people, if there is a team member who is not afraid to express himself, shares certain ideas and whatever, those bosses feel intimidated. Some even take it as being disrespectful if a team member would, come up to them and suggest something, or because they want to maintain that power that they feel they have.
Yeah.
Now, on the other hand, sometimes I honestly understand why people behave that way, like the bosses, because sadly we have some people around us. It's like if you don't have somebody at you to like giving the commands and whatever, I don't know, like there are some people who just don't take it upon themselves to just do what needs to be done. It's like there's somebody who has to constantly be at them. You should be doing this, or so much so that they may even wait for the command.
Yeah.
They know that they're supposed to shift this from here to there, but they're waiting for somebody to come and say, can you move this from here to here, please? Or but I mean, that you're supposed to have moved from morning. You were supposed to have moved that. Why is it still there? Then they get up and they move it.
Yeah.
They knew they were supposed to have moved it,
Yeah.
but they need somebody to tell them
Absolutely.
to move it, for them to move it. Now, I guess in a case like that, it's a boss that you need.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But and I think so. What you're getting to is that there are two types of work. There's knowledge work, and then there's process work. So let's say I'm working in a construction yard, and like you said, let's say there's a pile of bricks, and those pile of bricks have to be moved over to the other side of the yard. That's a fairly simple task, right? All you do is you go up, you pick them, you move them over there. There's nothing to really worry about. And so that kind of work, a boss is going to be useful because you just need somebody to tell people what to do. But when you get into knowledge work, so when you're a teacher, let's say, I can tell you, like, make sure your students on their MSTs all get 100%. And simply telling you that the goal is for all of your students to pass the MSTs, it doesn't mean you can just go and magically make that happen, right? It's to get to that point, you have to really know how to teach. You have to know what works. You have to be adaptable, because some students are going to need one thing where other students are going to need another thing. And to have a boss that's sitting behind you saying, this is what you have to do, this is how you're going to get them there, isn't going to work. Because maybe that boss was a great teacher, and that boss, when they're in the classroom, can get those passing grades for every student, but they're following a process that relies on their strengths. Whereas you have different strengths than that boss. And so when they tell you to do it their way isn't going to work for you, because you don't have those same strengths. You need to do it. You can still get there and get all those kids to pass, but you need a different process, a process that relies on your strengths.
Yes, and going back to the example that you used about people on a construction site and so on, I still feel that the boss may not necessarily be the best type of leadership to have there, because okay, what happens if the boss falls sick and is out for a week?
Yeah.
To me, you need to be able to create or build a team that does not necessarily sit and depend on your commands.
Absolutely.
I mean, you create the environment where people feel empowered, people feel that they can take on initiatives.
Yeah.
They trust that they see this needs to be done, they do it, and you are going to actually be proud of them for doing it, instead of being angry that they didn't wait for you to say you need to do it.
Yeah.
You know, so to me, a leader
Mm-hmm.
is just the best way to go.
Yeah.
And even when you have those maybe laid back people or difficult,
Mm-hmm.
you know, being a boss still may not necessarily be the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because at the end of the day, if you have people like that, it means that the whole mentality needs to change. You know, you need to develop these people differently so that they can have a different type of thinking,
Yeah.
a different mindset,
Yeah.
right? And the boss way is not going to do it.
And that's the next level right there, right? A boss isn't going to change anybody, but a leader is going to understand that you can do this job, we can get you there, and I'm going to do some coaching with you to help you get to the point we need you to be at, rather than just firing you and hope I can find somebody better.
I think it's even more tiring to be a boss
Mm-hmm.
because you constantly have to be there giving the commands and whatever.
Yeah.
Whereas to me, if you're a good leader, you can actually get to sit back, you know, and watch your team work together to make things happen.
Yeah.
You know, to me, your mind is going to be more at ease as
Yeah.
long as you know the right structures are in place and
Yeah.
you've done what needs to be done to develop your team.
And I think that's a big difference between a boss and a leader. I think the boss is scared. I think the reason they behave that way is because they understand that their leaders are judging them based on the output of their team, their expectations that they're supposed to meet. And so they think that to get my team there, I have to control all these different aspects because I have to get this, otherwise my people are going to yell at me. And at the end of the day, they make their jobs much more difficult because, like you said, if you take those leadership abilities, if you build a team that can work together, when you have to be out for a week because you're sick or whatever it is, you can trust that things are still getting done.
That's right.
Do you know who Steve Jobs is?
No, I don't.
Okay, so Steve Jobs is the founder of Apple. So this computer right now here, he built it, the phone, he designed the iPhones. Well, I mean, he was the guy that led all of that development at Apple, that made Apple the successful company it is.
Okay.
And he founded it, so he starts out as the CEO. But then the corporate basically doesn't like him because he's this young startup kid and they think, what does he know? And he's very arrogant. And so he gets forced out. Apple nearly goes bankrupt. I think in 1998, they were like 2 days from insolvency. So no more money and they're just not a company anymore. They begged him to come back to the company. So he came back and he saved the company. And so Apple is $1 trillion company today because they brought Steve Jobs back. And I got a video here I want us to watch that's sort of where he was at in the 80s. So when he was first with Apple, when they sort of forced him out, what his thinking was around leadership and hiring and such.
Okay. The greatest people are self-managing. They don't need to be managed. If once they know what to do, they'll go figure out how to do it. They don't need to be managed at all. What they need is a common vision. And that's what leadership is. What leadership is having a vision, being able to articulate that so the people around you can understand it, and getting a consensus on a common vision. We wanted people that were insanely great at what they did, but we're not necessarily those seasoned professionals, but who had at the tips of their fingers and in their passion the latest understanding of where technology was and what we could do with that technology, and who wanted to bring that to lots of people. So the neatest thing that happens is when you get a core group of 10 great people, it becomes self-policing as to who they let into that group. So I consider the most important job of someone like myself is recruiting.
We agonized over hiring. We had interviews. I could go back and look at some of the interviews agendas. They would start at 9 or 10 in the morning and go through dinner. A new interviewee would talk to everybody in the building at least once and maybe a couple times, and then come back for another round of interviews, and then we'd all get together and talk about it.
And then they could fill out an application.
No, they never filled out.
The most critical part of the interview, at least to my mind, was when we finally decided we liked them enough to show them the Macintosh prototype, and then we sat them down in front of it. And if they just kind of were bored or said, this is a nice computer, we didn't want it. We wanted their eyes to light up and them to get really excited, and then we knew they were one of us.
And everybody just wanted to work, not because it was work that had to be done, but it was because something that we really believed in that was just going to really make a difference. And that's what kept the whole thing going.
We all wanted exactly the same thing. And instead of spending our time arguing about what the computer should be, we all knew what the computer should be, and we just went and did it.
We went through that stage in Apple where we went out and we thought, oh, we're going to be a big company. Let's hire professional management. We went out and hired a bunch of professional management. It didn't work at all. Most of them were bozos. They knew how to manage, but they didn't know how to do anything. And so if you're a great person, why do you want to work for somebody you can't learn anything from? And you know what's interesting? You know who the best managers are? They're the great individual contributors who never, ever want to be a manager, but decide they have to be a manager because no one else is going to be able to do as good a job as them.
So that's you. You don't want the leadership role, but one day you're just going to have to take it.
Oh my goodness, Mr. Blaine. He was speaking there and I'm listening and I'm just nodding because that was just so true. A group of people who want the same thing. And that is so very important. You find yourself within an organization. There is a leader or boss, whatever. And you have that drive, you have that passion, you want things to happen. 1, 2, 3 of you want things to happen. And then you may just get this boss, leader, who wants the things to happen, but at the same time, it's almost like the person may still have a problem with the passion that you have, because in the person's mind, the person kind of deviates from the goal and then begins to think of, oh, this person is so good, maybe this person might get the praise, or this person might reach wherever, or people might start recognizing this person. It's like they just move away from that goal that is supposed to be the common goal, and they begin to start developing those little selfish voices in their head. And then that's what you need to just kind of like just dim that little spark.
Yeah.
You know, now when you really and truly have that passion, it's not easy to just dim the spark, but it can get tiring, it can be frustrating, you know, and these are the type of bosses or leaders, I'm using it interchangeably because, you know, sometimes those same people, they display the characteristics of leaders, and then at some point you see a boss.
Well, exactly.
You know, like
we can go back and
yes.
forth between the two. I might start out as a leader, and everything's going well, but 2-3 years down the road, something in the environment changes. Maybe my supervision changes, or maybe, you know, the stress is just building up. Maybe I've got personal issues, whatever it is, and I can fall into that boss category, even though I've been a leader for the past 3 years, because something's changed within the world that's changed the way I'm now interacting.
Trust you, Mr. Blaine, to put it like that. Sometimes we get selfish. You can say it, Mr. Blaine.
But there's a reason we get selfish, right? There's something behind that selfishness.
Yeah, but the problem is the selfishness. Yeah, sometimes we begin to think, you know, a little differently from where we started off. I understand that there are contributing factors, right? But if you're true to who you are and to the mission, you know what you want. If it is that I want the parents, you know, to work with me so that my students can progress and we can move at, you know, that pace that is just really satisfying and children are making progress. I don't care if you are the one who knows most of you know most of them and they work well with you and whatever. At the end of the day, I want what I want for us. It's going to benefit all of us, even if they're not coming to me all the time and they're going to you. I don't care that they're going to you, Mr. Blaine, because at the end of the day, it's the end product. Yes, the process is important, but it is what it is. You know, they may prefer to communicate with you than they do with me. But at the end of the day, when they communicate with you, you all have a good rapport and everything. The goal that we're all working towards, we can see ourselves getting close to it. So I don't care if they're not really coming to me, But we find some of the leaders slash bosses, by the time they realize, okay, you know, they're kind of going to you, they're not really coming to me, boom, it's like an attack on them, it's like a personal thing. And right away they're uncomfortable. Some go as far as even trying to sabotage certain things, just because they feel that it's moving away from them,
Right.
and it's going towards you. And sadly they forget about that goal that all of us should be working towards.
Exactly. Some people get too focused on themselves and taking credit. You know, and what these people find, like when you have a boss, what happens to a boss is that all of their talent leaves them, because eventually the talented people, like Steve Jobs said there, who wants to work for somebody they can't learn from? And so those people move on because they're talented. Other people see their talent and they have somewhere to go. Whereas the broken legs, the people that are just going to sit there and wait to be told to move the bricks, those people stay with them because those people can't get hired by anybody else. Everybody else knows that I don't want that person on my team. And so the boss gets stuck with all of these people that nobody else wants, because those are the only people that will work for him.
And sometimes it's in the same little selfish thinking. It doesn't sound too nice, but I think sometimes they even they feel satisfied. While that was not the goal, the main goal, but the fact that they're now, it's now going in the direction that they feel satisfied with, it's almost like they're okay. They're okay with it. Maybe in their mind they feel eventually we'll get to the goal, you know, but then for now it's going how I want. I am the one in charge and people are seeing me and whatever, and so they're just satisfied with that.
And that's it. Some people want a certain sense of harmony. They want, like, the workday to go well. If everybody's getting along and everybody's agreeing with me and doing what I tell them to, even though maybe somewhere lurking in the back, I'm not going to look behind the curtain, but there are problems, then they're going to be happy because, oh, look how well the day is going. Sure, I know that there are things I don't know about, but I'm just going to live in this ignorant bliss right now.
Yeah, sad.
You'll see it online sometimes. Like, you know, sometimes you're online and you see these stories about bad bosses or work situations that were terrible. And I'll see like a story where an employee is doing something a certain way, their boss doesn't like it, and so their boss reprimands them even though the way they're doing it is more efficient. And here we're looking at like those good employees that can move on. So when HR gets involved and it becomes a whole issue, they're like, you know what, no problem, I'll just quit. You can find somebody that can do it the way you want, and I'm going to go work over here. And then the boss starts to panic because, no, my goal wasn't to get you to quit. I just, you know, want things done my way. And the employee, because they can move on, is like, well, you know, this is the situation we're in. I'm going over there now.
Yes. And sadly, that's the thing. You find that there may be so much potential within a team, but then the bad bosses, leaders, whatever we want to call it, they just have a way of killing that vibe, some of them. You know, whether it's intentional or unintentional. I'm saying unintentional, and I'm not even believing what I'm saying there, because for some reason, to me, you'd have to know that, I mean, come on, this cannot be good. If you're going to be a little self-absorbed and all of that, you're a team working towards one common goal. So there's no way that it's supposed to be about how you are looking. You know?
And it does. It kills the spark, because you've got a team of, say, 10 people that love to innovate, love to create new ideas, that they're always coming together. But then they have this boss that comes along, and this boss never praises any of the work they do. Never shows any appreciation. Whenever something doesn't go right or they do something the boss doesn't like, the boss is always there. But for the positive, they're not. And even though this team isn't doing these things for the praise, the fact that they're only ever getting criticized and never getting praised, eventually their motivation for doing the thing dies. because you end up feeling unappreciated. We all want to be appreciated. It's not that I need the praise, but I do need to feel appreciated. And if that's not going to happen, then I'm just going to stop doing.
Very true. It is just so much better when you can work as a team and everybody's excited, and of course you will get little conflicts and so on. I mean, that's that's just the reality. But you can push on through. You can jump those hurdles and move on, because at the end of the day your mind is on that goal. And I think it's that mindset that allows you to be able to work through those little conflicts and jump those hurdles and all of that, because we know where we want to reach. Yeah, we know where we want to reach. It's not about self.
Right.
It's about where the team is going together.
And where I think leaders can go wrong sometimes is that when they have those star players, like they know if I leave this guy alone to just go and do his thing, he's going to do it. He's going to knock it out of the park. So I'm never going to check in with him. I'm never going to do anything. Like I'll send tasks his way as are needed. But since he knows what he's doing, I'm just going to kind of ignore him and let him do it. And I'm going to focus on all these people over here who are struggling or need that extra support. But by never really coming and checking in with your star player starts to wonder, what am I doing wrong? Why does the boss never come talk to me? Why do I have no communication? Why, and they start to, again, I think it goes back to that. Either they start to feel unappreciated, or they start to get worried that maybe I'm not doing a good job because I'm getting zero feedback. And our brains have evolved in such a way that anytime there's a gap in knowledge, we fill that gap in knowledge with the worst case scenario. When we were out in the jungles having to worry if that Russell was a tiger or if it was a bunny rabbit, we survived if we assumed it was a tiger and it turned out to be a bunny rabbit. But for those of us that decided to assume it was a bunny rabbit and turned out to be a tiger, they got eaten. And now in the modern world, obviously, we're not out trying to survive in the jungle, but we still have that fight or flight that kicks in, and our brains protect us by always assuming the worst whenever there's a gap in knowledge. And so the more we can communicate with our people, the more we can connect with them, the more we can make sure they understand where they stand, the more likely we are to keep people. A star player that gets ignored is eventually going to move on, because they're going to think I must not be working out here because nobody's checking in with me.
I think all we need is a nice little balance, a nice little balance. You have that little, you're given that little bit of autonomy, but off and on, we check on each other. We ensure that things are going okay. Do you need any support? Because the best person will still need support at some point.
Exactly. And that's exactly it. It's not that the leader has to come into the star player's office every day. But like you said, every once in a while, maybe once a week, maybe every couple of weeks, you just check in, make sure everything's going well, and that star player is going to be fine. But if you never go to them, they're going to start to panic.